My name is Noah Faye. I go to Barnard College of Columbia University, and I am accepting the Sharon Green Award on behalf of Columbia Hillel. Following the October 7th attacks, I overheard a group of students talking, and one of them says, I don't want to say all Jews are colonialist settlers, but, and then another student cuts her off and says, no, absolutely every single one of them is a white supremacist colonialist settler.
We don't want no Zionists here!
Since then, I personally have been cyberbullied. Last semester, I received a lot of blood libel. My personal whiteboard on my dorm door was vandalized. When I come out and say, as a Jewish woman, this is what anti-Semitism is, this is what I'm experiencing, that is not given any respect, honestly.
I am a student at Columbia University.
I did have the opportunity to speak at the March for Israel in Washington, D.C. That made me feel very proud to be Jewish. I felt so much love.
We fight peacefully. We are far from helpless. We are far from hopeless.
My main goal in advocating for the Jewish people in the state of Israel is to protect our community and to educate those who don't know about us. It's so important to do this advocacy work on campus because if we don't, no one else will.
My name is Micah Gritz, and I'm a senior at Tufts University. I grew up in a very traditional, conservative Jewish home, and Judaism was always an important part of my life. Going into my first year at Tufts, I had experienced anti-Semitism to a level I had never experienced before throughout my life. I remember one student mentioned that I must be wealthy because I'm Jewish. Another student said, Micah, you're Jewish, right? And I remember saying, yes, I'm Jewish. Why? And he said, well, that must mean that you kill Palestinian children, right? Jewish on Campus was founded in the summer of 2020. Our whole motto is, we're a Jewish organization that's by students for students, amplifying the experiences of Jewish students regarding anti-Semitism on campus. Anti-Semitism has exploded, and Jewish on Campus believes we need to be empowering Jewish students to be our own fighters against this form of hate on campus. What inspires my activism truly is my connection to Judaism that I received through my family. My father passed away, unfortunately, 2 years ago. I wear his Magen David all the time with pride, and so every day when I think, wow, this work is really hard, why do I do it? It's to continue the legacy of the Jewish people, especially in its memory.
My name is Hannah Weiler. I'm the president of the German Union of Jewish Students. My family is from a post-Soviet country where being Jewish or where practicing Judaism was forbidden and persecuted by the state. I would say my Jewish identity was connected to the negative sides of being Jewish. I didn't know anything about the Jewish holidays, I didn't know anything about Shabbat, and so on. When I was 16, I started to go to Jewish summer camps. And this is how my journey as a Jewish student activist began. Now I'm here as the president of the German Union of Jewish Students. We want to educate people, we want to advocate. And I would say that my organization is fighting for exactly this. The way that the Jewish community is perceived in Germany is oftentimes we are portrayed as victims, we are portrayed as black and white pictures, we are portrayed as only Orthodox or only men. I believe we are the first generation in Germany that is this loud and this unapologetically Jewish, and this is what the German Union of Jewish Students and our work is about, to fight for our rights and other people's rights, to fight for democracy, and to work for a better society for everyone.
I want to start by thanking the American Jewish Committee and the Green family for bestowing upon each of us this great honor. I am extremely proud to be standing before you all to represent Sharon's memory. While the significance of the AJC Sharon Green Award for Campus Advocacy has always been clear, This past academic year has shown us exactly why that is. I am here to accept this award on behalf of Columbia Barnard Hillel, to which I also express the most immense gratitude, as the year would have been entirely different had we, the Jewish students, not been privileged with their truly unwavering support. Yeah. I want to be transparent. As I stand in front of you all, reflecting on this past year, now as a Barnard alumna, I am overcome with emotion, grief, pain, and sorrow, mostly. This was not a good year. There is just no way around it. This year, I was forced to sit through guest lecturers brought in by my professor who denied the rape, assault, and mutilation of Israeli women and girls during the October 7th attack, celebrated Aaron Bushnell, who set himself on fire outside the Israeli embassy here in DC as a true, quote, patriot, and spoke of Israel to a group of who we now know are highly impressionable students as a, quote, imperialist colonial state that is, quote, committing genocide. I was also forced to face the reality that the student community I had come to cherish so dearly, my Barnard community, was a figment of my imagination. This was clarified for me with each call to globalize the Intifada, to burn Tel Aviv to the ground, and to bring death to the Jewish state. All calls that I heard on my campus, Columbia University, this year. So yes, as I stand here now, nearly 1 month after graduation, I am overcome with emotion, grief, pain, and sorrow, mostly. As is core to the Jewish spirit, I am filled also with strength, with determination, and with hope. Because for each friend I lost to anti-Semitism this year, I gained at least twice as many in Zionists. While we have all had to work this year to make sure the world hears and listens to our cries, the cries of Jewish students in agony, I would be remiss if I did not equally apprise you all of the way in which Jewish students, especially at Columbia, united to support each other, to support the Jewish state of Israel. Thank you. I am honored to be here to represent the Jewish student community at Columbia and Barnard in the shadow of Sharon's impactful legacy. I know an anxiety that has pervaded the older generations is that we, the younger generation, are not equipped to withstand the fear this latest strain of anti-Semitism has instilled in all of us. So let me reassure you all now, your daughters, your sons, your nieces, your nephews, your grandchildren did not yield 1 inch to the fear we faced this year. It is how I am able to stand in front of you all today, and we will continue to stand strong in the face of hatred of all forms, as we always have. Now, this brings me to one final emotion with which I am also overcome, and that is love, a feeling that has been sorely lacking across my entire generation. But let me again reassure you all now, I am but one of many, many Jewish students who is filled with love. My sisters and brothers and I, your daughters, sons, nieces, nephews, and grandchildren, love each other. We love being Jewish, and we love the state of Israel. That is both why and how we did not crumble this year. So thank you again to the Green family and to AJC for supporting Jewish students as we weather this storm. I know we will continue to stand strong as our parents and grandparents have done before us. Toda rabba.
It is an unbelievable honor to stand here today to address all of you at AJC Global Forum. I want to start by thanking the American Jewish Committee and the entire Green family for making this possible and for honoring us, the German Union of Jewish Students, with this award. When I first became president of the German Union of Jewish Students a year ago, I had high aspirations. I wanted to create more educational opportunities for young Jews. I wanted to open doors for Jews in Germany to thrive socially, culturally, and communally. And most importantly, I wanted to focus on Jewish pride. But as we all know, on October 7th, we all woke up in a new, cruel reality. Since the morning that Hamas terrorists invaded the south of Israel, murdering, raping, and kidnapping our brothers and sisters, we, both as an organization and privately, have been on the front lines of a war we never could have imagined reaching our community. Since then, we have spent every free minute advocating for the safe return of all hostages, supporting Jewish students across the country, meeting with politicians and fighting for a world without anti-Semitism, a world in which everyone can be safe and where no student is afraid to be Jewish on their campus. Today, I stand here representing the young Jewish generation of Germany. 90% of us have roots in the former Soviet Union. We are the first generation to grow up in Germany. Our parents and grandparents left everything behind to give us a better future, a future without religious persecution and fear. And yet, here we are in a world that our grandparents never could have imagined, a world where anti-Semitism and hatred is allowed to run rampant. However, the experiences of the generations before us have shaped our actions today. This is why, no matter what, and no matter how dark it might seem, we will never give up fighting for a world without anti-Semitism. This is Sharon's legacy that I am so proud to have been chosen to represent today. We will never give up standing up for freedom and democracy in a world where our children and grandchildren will only know the term anti-Semitism from history books. I want to once again express my deepest gratitude to AJC and the Green family for believing in us and supporting our work in Germany. I also want to thank my board, Norm, Debbie, Kobe, Lisa, Alex, Esti, and Seema for everything they've done for Jewish students in the past months. And I want to dedicate this award to all the European Jewish student leaders that are in this room today, who all are working so hard to create a safe environment for Jewish students across the continent. Together, we will continue fighting and showing that there cannot be a Europe without Jews. We will never
I'm from Boston, Massachusetts.
I'm from Australia.
I'm from New York, Italy, Canada.
I'm from Israel.
Frankfurt, Germany.
I'm from Dallas, Texas.
And I'm a member
of the AJC Campus Global Board.
What's giving me hope as a Jewish leader on campus today are all of the people who want to see a brighter future. American Jewish Committee has given me the opportunity to be on a board with Jewish students from across the world.
We're a groundbreaking, dynamic group informing AJC's work from a campus perspective and also devising the best ways to bring AJC's resources to campus.
Ensuring that it allows not just American voices, but international voices to be in the conversation.
After the October 7th massacre, we have had a lot of fear and anger and anxiety.
I've seen Jewish students hiding their identity, not going to campus anymore, not saying their real name because it's just too Jewish sounding.
Students are being beaten up after attending rallies or demonstrations that are pro-Israel.
Jews have become synonymous with everything that is hated, whether that be colonialism or white supremacy or privilege.
I want a future without anti-Semitism.
I think after October 7th, it's way more important for us to say we are Jewish and we are here, we are everywhere.
I want to make sure that the legacy that I leave behind is one where all Jewish students feel welcome.
AJC is making it possible for us to do just that. AJC is empowering the leaders, not only of tomorrow, but of today.
They bring students to high-level meetings to really get involved in solving some of the biggest problems in society today.
We've come together to stand up for Israel and stand up for the Jewish people in a way that we would not have otherwise.
I really don't know where we would be on campus without AJC.
My name's Eliza.
Tamara.
Abe. Jonathan.
Nati. Meredith.
My name is Ryan.
Katerina.
I'm Jewish.
And I'm proud. Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Please welcome AJC Director of Academic Affairs, Dr. Sarah Kudin.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Kudin, AJC's Director of Academic Affairs. In the months since the October 7th terror attacks, American campuses have taken center stage as sites of fierce anti-Israel activism and anti-Semitic vitriol. Tonight, we'll turn our attention to university presidents who sit at the helm of institutions of higher learning. University leaders have faced a unique set of challenges this academic year that have placed their decision-making in the spotlight in ways that are without precedent in this country. Our collective attention has been so highly attuned to campus and to university presidents, to their public statements, their testimony before Congress, their responses to the encampments. So many of us have watched with heavy hearts and even heavier expectations as university presidents have navigated issues of free speech, academic freedom, and ideals of opportunity and inclusivity in the face of a rising tide of anti-Jewish sentiment, both inside and outside classrooms, that has threatened those ideals. We will now have the chance to hear from two critically important voices from the very top who can speak to the role of university leadership during a time of crisis. We'll hear first from Ron Liebowitz, president of Brandeis University, who's focused on charting a clear and definitive course for Brandeis to confront anti-Semitism in the wake of October 7th. And he was the first university leader to revoke the charter of the activist group SJP on his campus. President Liebowitz will be in conversation with my colleague, Dr. Laura Shaw-Frank, AJC Director of the William Petchak Contemporary Jewish Life Department, who oversees AJC's entire spectrum of educational advocacy work. We'll then hear from Santa Ono, president of the University of Michigan. Michigan has been the site of long-standing, amplified protest activity, and it faces unique challenges. Its campus population boasts significant numbers of both Jewish and Palestinian students. Michigan is also a public university, meaning that it's subject to the First Amendment's broad conception of free speech that also includes hate speech. Santa Ona, who became president of the University of Michigan not terribly long ago in 2022, will be in conversation with AJC CEO Ted Deutsch. To start us off, please join me in welcoming Ron and Laura to the stage.
President Liebowitz, Ron, we're so honored to have you here with us this evening. You've been a voice of moral clarity in this period since October 7th, and we have an enormous amount to discuss, so I'm going to dive right in. Sure. I don't need to say that this was a very challenging year on campus, particularly when it comes to student activism and challenges to even the broadest notions of campus free speech. You've had to balance that free speech against the need to maintain an environment free from discrimination and harassment. What lessons would you say you learned this year about how to handle protest on campus?
First of all, let me say thank you for inviting me this evening. It's a wonderful opportunity to speak to so many, and unlike a faculty meeting, it looks like a friendly crowd. I would say there are a lot of lessons learned along the way this past year. And perhaps the most important ones were not being prepared for what we saw this past year. I'm going to leave it. Specifically, seeing our campus react in such a way to October 7th and having no sense of things related to First Amendment rights or to free speech or the responsibilities that come with free speech, the time, place, manner aspects. It was only 6 years earlier when Brandeis passed principles of free expression on campus and spent 1.5 years debating and discussing it with a lot of tension, a lot of opposition, but in the end, a passage both by the campus community and also by the Board of Trustees. So it was very odd to see how people felt all of a sudden that there was unfettered free speech on campus. So that was one thing. The more important thing to deal with as a leader, I think, was recognizing how strong the double standard is when it comes to Jews and when it comes to Israel. This might have been beneath the surface for many years and a long time, but it became quite evident in conversation, in discussion, and in faculty meetings when we debated whether or not one can suppress speech and still have a vibrant academic community. I think those were the things that I learned most.
Could we delve a little bit more into the issue of free speech? How have you managed that? Brandeis is a private university, so you have a little bit more leeway with respect to creating frameworks for speech on campus than a public university, for example. So how have you managed the issue of speech? Which forms of speech, except particularly campus protest speech, require intervention, and which ones don't?
Well, it's a judgment call. As I mentioned, we had the principles for free expression, which were high and mighty. They were very idealistic in some ways, but they were never really operationalized, put to the test, as we had after October 7th. In my view, we are a private institution, and so we can, of course, have limits to some types of speech. As an academic myself, of course, I believe very strongly in free speech. It's really the only way to engage in differences and learn from one another. However, there is a point by which or beyond which I think one starts infringing upon the academic mission of the institution. And so I draw the red line where things like Title VI become intimidating, harassment, incitement to violence, and really denigrating individuals. It doesn't advance the educational mission to have people screaming death to others. That does not advance any education. And in my conversations on campus, I've deemed that type of speech gratuitous speech rather than free speech. And we want to protect free speech, but it's in the name of the educational mission, and that's where we draw the line.
Another central issue, and you already alluded to it, that presidents have had to grapple with this year is the issue of academic freedom. We've all seen many examples of university faculty members from around the country who hold views that are anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic, and even use their positions as faculty members to platform those views. On the one hand, faculty in institutions of higher education, particularly tenured faculty, enjoy academic freedom, and they should and they must. On the other hand, activist classroom spaces and other behavior of faculty have really contributed to the toxic atmosphere for Jewish students on campus. How have you managed this issue at Brandeis?
One thing I tried to do was to send out a clarifying memo, not so necessarily warmly received by all faculty, but it tried to remind folks as to what academic freedom is and isn't. Academic freedom is critical, of course, for the advancement of any discipline, the pursuit of knowledge, the pursuit of truth. However, it doesn't give anyone the right to say anything at any time in any classroom. And in the classroom, academic freedom gives the faculty member the right to assign readings, to lecture on things in his or her expertise. It doesn't allow me, as a geographer, Russian specialist, to go into a room and pontificate about something about which I am not an expert. That is not academic freedom. I can do it outside the classroom. I can do it outside of the context of Brandeis University, but it's not right for the faculty member. It's not academic freedom to pontificate on any and all issues in the classroom. We haven't had many of those circumstances at Brandeis, and our students are very outspoken. I've only heard a few of these, and I check weekly in our Office of Equal Opportunity where students can go to make lodge such complaints. We've had a few, and one good example is when a faculty member postponed or canceled class to allow students to go to a pro-Palestinian protest. I'm not against pro-Palestinian protests whatsoever, but for a faculty member to take a position to cancel class, not to reschedule it, but also to put students in that class who don't want to go to the rally and have very different views for what that rally was about, really shows poor judgment and really, in my view, is a violation of academic freedom. And so we had the conversation. We brought in the faculty member and we made it clear that we have these conversations when they happen. And the faculty member was actually more open-minded about this, hadn't really recognized what atmosphere in the classroom that she was creating. But that's what we do. We try to have conversations first. And luckily, at least for me and for Brandeis, we haven't had many of these situations.
How should universities be looking at conversations about BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction movement that calls for sidelining and exclusion of Israel, or any kind of call for restriction on academic and economic engagement with Israel? Has that been an issue at Brandeis, and how have you managed it?
It hasn't been a real visible issue until we had conversations at said faculty meetings over the course of the last 5 months, where faculty members were trying to understand, where the line was drawn between what is anti-Semitism and what is anti-Zionism. And we talked about the Venn diagram and where they intersect. And some faculty members would stand up and say, I am Jewish, as a Jew. I'm very much for BDS. Ron, do you consider me an anti-Semite? I held my tongue in those big faculty meetings, but in small venues, I had 9 or 10 small meetings with faculty, anywhere from 7 to 15 faculty members to talk about campus climate and to talk more specifically about these issues. And that same individual repeated the question to me in the small conversation group and said to me, I'm a Jew, I'm a philosopher, and I'd like to know whether or not you think I'm an anti-Semite because I'm a strong supporter of BDS. And my only response to the individual was, I can't tell whether or not you're an anti-Semite or not, but tell me this. What other BDS movements are you involved in other than the one with Israel? And there was silence. So on our campus, luckily, there hasn't been much of a BDS movement. Who knows what will happen come the fall. But I also remember before I became president at Brandeis, I was at Middlebury College, president at Middlebury. And in 2014, the American Studies Association was the first professional association to vote for BDS. And I remember Middlebury and Brandeis were the 2 universities that came out very strongly against that vote. And I was very impressed by what I saw at Brandeis. That was back in 2013-14. So we haven't had all that much BDS on campus yet.
Let's hope it stays that way. I want to turn my attention to some of the bigger questions on campus that intersect with anti-Semitism. We know, for example, that siloing and polarization are real problems in American society today, and that dialogue across difference is rare. And we also know that that reality is inextricably intertwined with anti-Semitism that we've seen on campus. How are you thinking about breaking down barriers between different groups of students that divide students and fostering dialogue across difference at Brandeis?
We've been thinking about this and talking about this even before October 7th. Brandeis is a place where Jewish students are no longer the majority, but they are the largest group of any student group, and a very strong presence on campus, and great diversity within that student group as well. It's a very rich, engaged, and really unified group. But we always worry. My job, of course, as president of the institution is to protect the safety and the environmental atmosphere for all students on campus, not just Jewish students, not just other students, all students. So we've been concerned about this for quite a while because What happens on campus is a reflection much of what's going on in society, and as societies become siloed, as you say, and divisive within itself, we have feared that as well. We haven't been as successful in this area as we had hoped. We tried a lot of things after October 7th. We tried learning circles, which is big in the Native American community, which is different from just having group encounters because it has a respectful presence for each individual who states their case without any response. But there's a scribe who collects all the information and then, of course, shares it and then go into a second round of these conversations as well. We had a teach-in. We canceled classes to have a full day of teach-in with panels of specialists on the conflict. We had panels that were sponsored by the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies and the Crown Center for Middle East Studies with experts from the greater Boston area. All these things happened over the course of 3 or 4 months. And the biggest disappointment was that there were large turnouts of faculty and staff, smaller turnouts of students. And when we engaged the students to talk to them, they just felt that they'd been through a lot, and they felt and they feared that they were putting into jeopardy a lot of the friendships that they had on campus by coming to these and speaking out. So we're back to the drawing board trying to figure out the best way to do this. In the fall, we'll have Khalil Shikaki and Shai Feldman, a Palestinian from Ramallah, and Shai Feldman's an Israeli from Tel Aviv who's on the Brandeis faculty. They'll be teaching a course that they've taught before 9 times, but not for the last 4 years, on the conflict and how to teach and learn about the conflict. We're looking forward to that and having some events related to that to get more students drawn in. But this is our big challenge. It's really, really difficult. Students don't want to risk their relationships on campus. And it's not, in essence, at Brandeis at least, about fearing grades or insulting faculty. It's more the cohesion and cohesiveness of the community that's very, very important to the students at this point.
This spring, Brandeis took the step of extending the date by which students could apply to transfer to Brandeis from other universities. Could you talk a little bit about your decision to make that policy change? Why did you think that that was an important thing to do in this moment?
I think we were watching what was going on so many campuses, seeing what was happening and recognizing it was late in the semester, and we had a deadline normally for transfers that was at the end of April. And at that point, we said to ourselves, which students who wanted to just pursue their academic work outside of all this mishigas on their campuses could do so? And what would be their path to do it? Would they all have to take off? Would they take a year off? What would they do? And so we had this conversation, and I think if you saw the notice that went out, it wasn't just for Jewish students, although we were focused primarily on Jewish students, but it was for all students, and we noted that because we had heard in some conversations, just in talking to friends and talking to relatives and people across the country, that a lot of students just wanted to pursue their studies. They didn't like the interventions that were going on. They didn't like that at Columbia they could not go into the dining halls or library for 2.5 weeks. And you question what that did to their studies. And so we decided to open the doors and invite those who wish to do that. We put it towards the end, May 31st, because we figured April 22nd, April 29th, too close to finals. Students would not really have presence of mind to apply. And so we kept the deadline open till May 31st, with decisions to come on June 30th.
I know many people are grateful for that. So none of us can accurately anticipate what's going to happen this fall, but we imagine that you and your team are carefully preparing for a range of scenarios on Brandeis's campus come September, including perhaps student protests, including all kinds of possibilities. So how are you preparing for the fall?
We're trying to make best use of all the remarkable resources we have on our campus, and many campuses have as well, to engage students in smaller groups. We're engaging our 5 chaplains in our chaplain's office of all faiths to have multi-faith conversations, interfaith conversations. We're talking to our research centers. We have 5 research centers at Brandeis that deal with the Jewish experience and also Israel. We're getting them to sort of host, encouraging them to host events that they can engage in small groups. We recognize that big group meetings aren't really effective. So we're trying to do as much to engage students. My whole senior staff recognizes that students might feel a little intimidated to come in and talk about campus climate to the president, so they're holding extra office hours specifically for students to come in small groups to meet with them as well. But we're all ears. If people have really good ideas on how to open this up, because it's been very, very challenging, we're all ears.
And last but not least, we are here in a room full of prospective and current university students, parents and grandparents, all of whom are really keen to know that the future for Jewish students will be a bright one of unfettered opportunity, as we have known in the past in America, the recent past. What role do you see Brandeis playing in the national conversation about fostering inclusive and fair environments for Jewish students in the higher education space?
Boy, well, Brandeis has a special place in higher education in the United States. It's the singular, secular, Jewish-founded institution in the country. And I believe, at least as president, with that comes responsibility to the American Jewish community and to Jewish students today and future Jewish students. So in addition to the excellent academic resources that I mentioned before, we launched a multi-pronged program on anti-Semitism at Brandeis about 15 months ago. This was with the support of Robert Kraft and the Kraft Foundation to combat anti-Semitism. And Robert and his foundation gave us the funds to create 3 programs, one that addressed students, one that addressed leaders in higher education, and one that addressed a Hornstein Professional Jewish Leadership Program. All 3 of these areas, I believe, will combine to address the 3 areas that need to engage in anti-Semitism to make a difference in the future. The first program for students gives them opportunities to work throughout the economy in multiple sectors to see how anti-Semitism shows up. They do research, they work with professionals, and they gain valuable experience. The hope is that they come back to campus, share that information, work with faculty, and spread the word that way. The second program is something that I'm very partial to, because I believe strongly that you can't leave the onus on all the students. If leadership at universities and colleges don't understand what anti-Semitism is and how best to address it, I don't think we have a chance in higher education. So leadership is important. Rachel Fish, who some of you saw earlier today, is leading that part of the program. It's a very, very important program. We've already had 3 or 4 major events with over 100 leaders in higher education, and this is deans of students, deans of academic affairs, provosts, DEI officers who come together and hear from experts about Judaism, about anti-Semitism, about Zionism and anti-Zionism, giving them a foundation and a base to understand. We've also started programs K through 12 as well, where teachers will come into Brandeis, where Rachel puts together a program for a day or 2 days. We just completed a 4-day institute at Brandeis this past Friday, doing the similar things. So we're very committed to this teaching and outreach in the area of anti-Semitism. And the Hornstein program is really just preparing future professional Jewish leaders, and we're revamping the whole curriculum to bring modules and anti-Semitism into the curriculum. In addition, we have the Cohen Center for the Study of Modern Judaism, which has done remarkable work on Jewish communities throughout the country for years, and now is very much focused on anti-Semitism on university campuses and trying to really understand both the Jewish population and the non-Jewish population's attitudes. So I think Brandeis has this role to play. It's a sort of a new role in addition to the academics, but I think it's really our calling and it's our responsibility.
Thank you. We are so grateful for your moral clarity and your incredible leadership, and I think that this entire audience, and indeed the entire American Jewish community, can take an enormous amount of pride in Brandeis University.
Thank you
so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please welcome President of the University of Michigan, Dr. Santa Ono, and AJC CEO and Michigan alumnus, Ted Deutsch.
President Ono, thank you for being with us. We have a very serious topic at hand. I will dispense with any other conversation only by referencing the national championship this year. Congratulations.
Go Blue.
Now, that's it. Okay, this has been, President Ono, this has been a really challenging year for Jewish students across America and around the world. You saw that, I know you were watching intently as Noah and Hannah shared their experiences from their campuses. At Michigan, we saw anti-Semitic rhetoric. It was a difficult year. You had to contend with an encampment, protests. I'd like to start by focusing on the issue of the encampment and how you reached the decision to ask the protesters to remove the encampment, and when they refused ultimately to remove it, what did you do?
Well, thank you very much for the question. By the way, thank you for inviting me to be part of this AJC Global Summit or Forum. It's incredibly important, this conversation, and I'm happy to be here with all of you. As occurred in about 120 other colleges and universities, we did have an encampment. And it persisted on our campus for 3.5 weeks. It started soon after the Columbia one. And as you know, being an alumnus, the University of Michigan has a long history of supporting student activism. And so in that context, and with it being peaceful for much of that time, it went on, and I had a number of conversations with students of all types regarding the encampment. I spoke to the executive students on Hillel, as well as students called an organization called FOG, Facts on the Ground, and they're inspirational Jewish students, much like Hannah and Noah at the University of Michigan. And we had conversations, and we were verging on graduation. And I asked them, should we intervene right now? Because already it was clear that that resulted in escalation and violence. And I got the clear advice from the students that they said, first, we are the COVID class that didn't have a graduation from high school. Please don't do anything to escalate things in the last few days of class and exams. And please give us the graduation we didn't have for high school. And as you know, we did that, and then soon thereafter, we asked many, many times for the individuals in the encampment to voluntarily decamp, and they refused. And ultimately what happened was that these become very dangerous. They're fortified, the tents are very flammable, there was quite a bit of wiring going into a limited number of sockets for electricity. There was some open flame, and despite a number of requests to take the encampment down, it did not occur, and so we had to go in and involuntarily remove the tents. And so that's how it happened at Michigan.
And ultimately, with the intimidation that students felt, there were rules, certainly rules in place that affected the safety of students on campus. You told them to take it down, they didn't, and you came in and took it apart.
Absolutely, it is the right thing to do. If it weren't for the request that we not escalate matters because of the desire to finish the semester and have graduation, it's very likely that we would have taken them down earlier. But that is a wish that I wanted to really grant, that graduation. And I recognize the reason why I was really interested in perhaps taking down earlier is because every day the tents were there were painful for Jewish students. And I knew that, and it was wrong, and I wanted to step in earlier.
And I appreciate that. And on that, just to continue there in your acknowledgement of how painful it was and what some of the challenges that exist even now. There was recently an anti-Semitic attack on one of your regents' places of work, Regent Acker's workplace. And you said clearly that harassment and attempts to intimidate have no place in civil society. So the question is, with respect to harassment and civil and attempts to intimidate, what steps are you taking to protect Jewish students and Jewish faculty on your campus?
Well, I've been very clear after the tents were taken down that I will have zero tolerance for this happening again. And I have said very clearly that moving forward, the University of Michigan will hold individuals accountable for any violation of civil or criminal statute. Enough is enough.
One of the issues that comes up, it was just part of the conversation that Laura engaged in, is on the topic of BDS. President Ono, there are some universities that ended their encampments by agreeing to consider BDS, by agreeing to consider canceling exchange programs with Israel. I would ask you, how should universities be looking at conversations about BDS or any kinds of calls for restrictions on academic engagement with Israel? How's that played out on your campus?
Well, I'll tell you my personal response and then the response of the institution.
Okay.
First of all, I've been the president of 3 universities: the University of Cincinnati, the University of British Columbia, and the University of Michigan. And in each of these institutions, I have made it clear that I am personally against BDS. And the reasons are simple. BDS is anti-Semitism because boycotting one nation, in this case Israel, to the exclusion of any other nation is nothing other than anti-Semitism, and it's antithetical to my personal values, first of all.
Yeah. And the calls, some universities have considered BDS. They've considered ending academic engagement with Israel. Can you tell us about Michigan's relationship with Israeli institutions, academic exchanges? How are you approaching that issue?
Soon after October 7th, in one of my communications, I said that we would actually enhance our relationships with Israeli institutions for a variety of reasons. Number one, the University of Michigan is in its 2nd decade of incredibly productive interactions with Israeli universities, with Technion, with Weizmann Institute. Incredible discoveries that benefit all of mankind have come out of that relationship between Michigan and these universities. It's simply ludicrous for an institution like Michigan that has global links, we're at a global forum, to cut bridges. Universities are meant to build bridges for the benefit of humanity. So we will not even consider, we will actually build bridges and enhance those kinds of collaborations for the benefit of students around the world.
Thank you. I'd like to turn specifically to your thought. We've talked about the anti-Semitic rhetoric and the response. I'd like to talk about the focus on anti-Semitism by the university, starting with recently inaugurated Wallenberg Institute for the Study of Anti-Semitism. What will that do? Why is this a priority for the University of Michigan? And what impact, as we discuss the threats of anti-Semitism to the Jewish community, to Jewish students at Michigan and around the country, what kind of impact can a center like that have on your own university and perhaps even beyond?
Well, let me start off by talking to you about who Raoul Wallenberg was. He was a righteous among nations, recognized individual of Swedish origin, who was a graduate of the University of Michigan in 1935. But the reason why he was so honored was because he saved single-handedly thousands of Jewish lives during the Holocaust by providing passports and providing a safe place for them to hide during the Holocaust. And he's a person that we celebrate at the University of Michigan. And the reason why the Wallenberg Institute was created was we thought about it in the early days of my presidency, that if you have someone of that caliber, we should celebrate them because students and faculty and staff should emulate Raoul Wallenberg. And so we wanted to create this institute where we would teach people about his values, that we would bring people together to understand the root causes of anti-Semitism, and where we would have curriculum and so that all students could understand the dangers of anti-Semitism or any kind of hate against a religious group. And so that we could also model civil discourse, which is so lacking today, that it would be a venue where people could talk about issues, geopolitical issues, in a calm and civil manner. And for that reason, we wanted to do it early on, even before October 7th, and after October 7th, it became even more urgent that we do so. And I'm really looking forward to the impact it has, not only on Michigan, but hopefully on the world. We need to lead at the University of Michigan. We have, since the 1920s, when the Ivy League schools had quotas in the number of Jewish students that matriculate, we opened our doors to Jewish students. We are one of the largest student bodies for Jewish students. We have 6,000 students who are Jewish. And for that reason, it's a part of our history, part of our tradition. It's imperative that I, as president, take a leadership role in making sure that they thrive and feel welcomed on our campuses.
Thank you. So, President Ono, if I could then just follow up on that response, how are you preparing for the fall to address what I think everyone here acknowledges is the high probability of new forms of protest, anti-Semitic statements, calls for the destruction of Israel? We appreciate the center and the academic approach, but how are you thinking about and what are you doing to anticipate the fall?
It will be a multifaceted approach. We are very hard at work, as is the case on all the colleges and universities across the nation. In addition to the Wallenberg Institute, we're thinking about how to create new spaces beyond the Wallenberg Institute for civil discourse. We're actually committing the whole year to a year of democracy and civic engagement. That's how important it is for us. But we will also, as an institution, like I said, double down on our connections with universities and institutes. In Israel, we will be at events like this because we want to interact with you. We need your help. We need to be in this all together to combat anti-Semitism.
And thank you for giving me this opening. Michigan has partnered with AJC on a number of initiatives already. We've taken university leaders to Israel on Project Interchange. We're partnering on anti-Semitism education for faculty and staff. And our second University President Summit is coming up this fall. We hope, President Ono, with your participation, tell us why, first of all, why is it a priority to engage in this work with an organization like AJC?
Well, I'm very grateful to AJC for the collaborations that we already have. And some of you may know that we will be providing anti-Semitism education and training to faculty, staff, and students, and even alumni. And we have already leaned heavily on the AJC, and we're very, very grateful for all the expertise that exists here. I have been to Israel. I love Israel, and I can't wait to go back. And you will find me in many, many events such as this because I want to listen. I want our students, not only those at Michigan, but everywhere, to know that the presidents of the colleges and universities care about them. It's important. It's important for the entire community of university leaders to be as brave as the students that we heard from. Noah and Hannah. I'm nothing compared to them. But we have to step up to the plate. We have to be at the table. We have to be clear and speak with moral clarity about what is right and what is wrong.
President Ono, it shouldn't be that hard to say in front of almost 2,000 Jewish leaders from around the world that we have to speak with moral clarity about this moment, but unfortunately for too many it is. Thank you for saying that out loud with us. And finally, President Ono, we have several hundred campus leaders from around the world who are here at Global Forum. Jewish students want to know that their university officials are listening to them, that they will engage with them. And they want to know that their university presidents will engage with them as they would with any other student population. Tell us as we prepare to wrap, tell us what you'll be doing this fall to ensure that you're actually listening to student voices on campus in the face of this anti-Semitism that we've seen since 10/7.
I'll be very honest with you. During this year, as you say, it's been a very difficult year. If there was one thing I would do better, it would be more present for our students. You know, I'm not going to wait till the fall to answer your question. I was approached by the executive of Hillel, by Facts on the Ground, FOG, and these students, every single one of them are inspirational, just like Noah and Hannah on our campus. And I've spent time with them. I would have done it earlier if I were to do it again, but I have met with them before the end of the semester. I'm going to meet with them before they come to campus. I'm going to meet with them regularly throughout the year. I was going to go to Hillel for Shabbat dinner, and some of you may know that I went there. When I was going there, it got out that I was going to attend, and there was a concern that I would be a disruption to what should have been a joyous occasion. This time around, no matter what happens, I'm going to go there because being present is important.
And President Ono, do you have a message specifically for the students? I think so often in these meetings we talk about the students, but they're here. They deserve to hear from you.
Well, I don't know. Could the students stand? I can't see all of you. Could you please stand so we can give you a round of applause? Please stand. This is what I want to say to all of you. Thank you for inspiring leaders like me. You know, I was close to tears in listening to Noah and Hannah, their bravery. You know, the one thing when I was speaking to Barack Obama when he spoke in Vancouver that gives, in that case, him, but in this case, me, hope, is the amazing clarity, integrity, and civility of the next generation that comes behind us. And what I want to say to you in my last few seconds is whether you're from the University of Michigan or the University of Cincinnati or any of the colleges and universities around the world, I want you to know that we will stand with you. We hear you, and we're going to do everything we can to make this year a better year than last year. Thank you so much.
President Santa Ono, thank you. Thank you.